Hi there, I'm Randy Patterson. This is another in a series of posts on cognitive distortions. These are ways that human beings routinely misperceive the world around us. We're looking here at the screen between external reality and the world we perceive and how reality changes on the way in. And today's bias is all about memory. Have you ever noticed that when you're feeling really frustrated with someone you've known a long while, like maybe your spouse or a sibling, you find it really easy to remember all the other times they've been a jerk to you? And then at other times, when things are going really well in that relationship, you think, this person is great. What was my problem with them? Why did I ever question this? What's going on here? It's a phenomenon called the Mood Congruent Memory Bias. If you have this long history with the person, there are probably going to be times when you're really glad that they're in your life, and times when you're angry or frustrated by them. We might think of these as green memories, good ones, and red memories, bad ones. And they've all been stored away. Now, it turns out that when you feel a certain way, you're in a certain emotional state. It becomes easier to remember other times when you felt the same way. So if you're angry with them, the memories of other times when you've been angry with them are easier to access. It's like the files are sitting right there in front of you. And times when you felt differently are somewhat harder to access. They're hidden away in the filing cabinet. Logically, it might seem to you that you can't always have felt this way toward them. If that was the case, why would you have them in your life? Why would you have married them? There must be good bits about this relationship, but they seem less significant than they usually do, and less numerous. Now, the same thing happens outside relationships. So let's say you're prone to depressive episodes. Much of your life, you're fine. But every now and then your mood really dips down into serious depression territory. And eventually you pull out and you go back to your old self. Maybe you get therapy, or maybe you just start doing things that you know tend to make you feel better, like getting out of the house, turning off YouTube, getting some exercise, becoming more active. And that tends to help resolve these episodes for many people. Not exclusively, but those are some of the things that tend to help. For many years, I ran a program for people who had just been released from hospital for the treatment of major depression. And I'll tell you a secret. Hospitals are often very useful for this. They pull the person out of the environment where the depression developed. A lot of therapy can take place, and they can keep people safe. But very few people who go into hospital with depression come out of that hospital perfectly fine. That's just not how it works. So our program was designed to help them take up their lives again and manage circumstances to help them resolve the depression. Anyway, the program turned out to be very helpful for most of the people who went through it. And we had a follow-up program that people could come to once a month for a check-in. Mostly, people came when things were feeling a little shaky. But every so often, somebody would pop by who was completely better. And they talked about their experience in an interesting way. Now, they knew they'd been depressed. And if they really tried, they could remember just how awful that felt. But they couldn't quite remember how they got that way, or why that way of looking at the world seemed so persuasive and reasonable. It was like that depressive self was another life, another person. It felt completely alien to them. And since then, I've seen a lot more people with depression. And every so often, someone will go into an episode and suddenly it's like the curtain has been swept aside. It's very familiar. Oh, yeah, this is what it felt like. And now, feeling better seems alien. Usually they know they've had long stretches of feeling well, but it feels pretty theoretical, like it was some other life, some other person. Now that they're depressed, they have crystal clear memory of all the other times that they felt the same way. And for some people, it's so strong that it feels like they've never been any different. Depressed people will often say, I have felt this way my entire life. And they really mean it. And that's possible, though it's pretty rare. What's usually happening is the mood congruent memory bias. The depression in the present is making past episodes of the same feeling easier to remember. And it's making times when they felt differently harder to remember. So experienced therapists always treat that idea with empathy, but we know that it's not conclusive. Maybe this person really has always been this way, but maybe not. The same thing happens with anxiety. When you're anxious, it can be really easy to remember all the other times when you've been anxious, and you can just start seeing yourself as a chronically anxious person. When you're jealous, you can feel like that's something you have always felt about this other person. When you're angry, it can seem like you've always been angry, or that other people are always doing things against you. And because in those moments, your whole history seems to align, it seems even more valid to feel this way. Important, even. Look at all the jerky things they've done. Of course I should be angry with them. So the mood congruent memory bias tends to intensify those negative feelings. It polarizes your emotions, pushing you away from the reality, which is that your feelings about yourself, about life, or about those other people are pretty variable. How do you get around this? Well, the critical thing, as always, is to recognize that it happens, and maybe that it's happening now. When you feel something strong, know and remember that memories of times when you felt the same way are going to be more prominent. To counter this, you need to search a little deeper. Look for memories when you felt differently. Hey, you married this person. Clearly, you did not think they were a jerk the whole time. When have they been better? You haven't been depressed continuously, so when have you felt something different? There are times when you could have been anxious, but you weren't. When was that? And play those memories to yourself. This can help smooth out those highs and lows somewhat and make it less likely that you'll do something you regret later, like sever a relationship that's mostly okay, or quit a job that's sometimes enjoyable, or retreat to home out of depression and making the depression even worse. Like all of these distortions, you can also use a reminder to distrust the bias. In this case, when have I felt differently? Ask yourself that and answer it. My books, including the Assertiveness Workbook, How to Be Miserable, and How to Be Miserable in Your 20s, are all available from bookstores and online booksellers. There's information about each of them at randypatterson.com, and my online courses can be found at psychologysalon.teachable.com. Thanks for watching.